In 924, the great Edward the Elder, son of Alfred the Great, died. He was succeeded as king by his son Athelstan, who would prove to be his father's match in kingly ability. Athelstan would, as Edward had done, receive homage from the other powerful men in Britain, including the King of Scots, Constantine II. But in Athelstan's time, promises of loyalty could be fleeting, and the English king would be obliged to campaign in Scotland to ensure his effective overlordship of the island of Britain. Athelstan's power was indeed mighty, but not quite total. In 937, he would face the biggest threat to his rule in the shape of an allied army of Vikings and Scots. Constantine, as was the case with later Scottish kings, certainly resented the power of the English crown, and he also maintained hopes of expanding his own kingdom with military conquests, whilst his new ally, Olaf Guthrum, King of Dublin, harboured similar hopes by re establishing a Scandinavian foothold in England with the conquest of Northumbria. For them, an alliance seemed not only natural but necessary to overcome the mighty Athelstan and fulfill their dreams. What followed next was one of the defining battles in all English history. Athelstan and his predecessors had gradually formed a kingdom we'd recognise today as England. Beyond that, Athelstan and his father Edward had taken steps to preserve the fledgling kingdom's future by forcing vows of loyalty from their neighbours. However, as already mentioned, these vows could easily be backtracked upon, and for Athelstan he would need a complete and total military victory to ensure his supremacy in Britain. That victory would come at the Battle of Brunanburh in 937. The location of Brunanburh is still keenly debated upon, but certainly it was located somewhere in the north of England, probably in the northwest. How would Athelstan have felt as his enemies threatened to destroy his kingdom? If he was nervous, he showed little or no sign of it. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, with its wonderful poem, describes in rousing detail Athelstan's great moment of triumph. For Constantine and Olaf, the Battle of Brunanburh was nothing short of a calamity. The Scottish king was described by the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles as being aged at the time of the battle, with Constantine around 60 at Brunanburh. So this was no mean endeavour he was undertaking, but he soon found himself shorn of his kinsmen, deprived of his friends, as the Scots were cut to pieces by the English. The situation evidently became desperate for Constantine, as he was forced to abandon his own son, who was left mangled with wounds. And for his ally Olaf, the situation was little better. His Northmen, survivors of darts, disgraced in spirit, were equally overwhelmed and forced to flee in their boats and for the safety of Dublin. The English had fought magnificently, and led not only by their inspirational king, but also by his half brother Edmund, who would, in 2 short years, succeed Athelstan on the throne. Far and wide, corpses could be seen, struck down by arrows, pierced with spears, or run through with swords. It is with good reason that the Anglo Saxon Chronicle says, "Not yet in this island was there a greater slaughter of people felled by the sword's edge." It was a pivotal moment in England's history. Who knows what would have become of England had Athelstan been defeated, or even worse, had he and his brother been killed? For the time being, the Scots and Vikings may have settled for pickings in the north, but would they have stopped at that? The battle also had another consequence. Athelstan had given his successor Edmund the perfect experience a potential 10th century king needed, and Edmund's own reign, when it came, would be challenging. The victory at Brunanburh, whilst emphatic, wasn't totally decisive. Olaf as one might expect of a man of his origins, would be persistent, and continued to harbour hopes of English conquest even after his and Constantine's trouncing at Brunanburh. Indeed, the Vikings would, for a short time during Edmund's reign, retake Northumbria, and large swathes of Mercia were briefly overrun as well. It was precisely at that moment that King Edmund would need to keep his head. The pressure on him would have been immense. He could not fail his predecessors. And Edmund would hold his nerve. Most of the losses in the first years of his reign were reversed, although Northumbria would continue to be a problem child well into the reign of Edmund's brother Edred. Had Athelstan lived for a few more years, the English crown's authority over the north would have perhaps been more complete, and Edmund was not quite at the level of brilliance as his predecessors had been, but nonetheless he fought valiantly, with his contributions at Brunanburh being most memorable. So Brunanburh, that battle of 937 that saw the fate of England hanging in the balance, a battle that is so colourfully brought to life by the Anglo-Saxon chronicles. With the site of the battle still unknown, there is a certain mythology surrounding Brunanburh, and from it the legend of Athelstan was born. As a man, Athelstan was charitable, humble, and unassuming, kind to rich and poor alike. However, to his enemies, he was a man to be feared, nowhere better evidenced than at Brunanburh. Even before the battle, Athelstan's reputation was flourishing. At the behest of Henry the Fowler, the great German king, Athelstan's half sister was married to Henry's son, who will be known to history as Otto the Great, and Harold Fairhair of Norway sent Athelstan a beautiful ship with a purple sail, a token of his high esteem. By the time the dust settled at Brunanburh, Athelstan had become the greatest ruler in Christendom, and he was, frankly, the original Hammer of the Scots.